So what has been the challenge? What have you, I know you have been researching on why these young men and women do not want to go into forest education. What has been their challenge? What are they telling you? What is, I mean, scaring them away from this particular sector?
I believe what one of the main findings of the survey has been that really there is a problem with the perception of the forest sector and the career opportunities in the forest sector. So for young people, it seems to be more desirable to pursue careers in other sectors other than the forest-based sector. So ultimately, it's a communication challenge. So that was really one of the conclusions that, we need to become more efficient and more professional also in communicating about forests and trees and, all the career opportunities that exist in the sector. And, that these are really very fulfilling, jobs to work with the forests and trees and the people. So that's a communication challenge. And then I think one of the reasons why actually that challenge exists is, and you have already mentioned it, that the younger one, the school children, primary and secondary education, already there, there is insufficient, education about forests and trees, insufficient knowledge also oftentimes on the side of the teachers who just don't know very much about forests and trees. So, and insufficient exposure really to the practice of forestry and to forests and trees per se. You mentioned the school gardens. Similar experiences exist from other parts of the world. Finland, for example, where every school has an assigned piece of forest land where the pupils can come and see, how the trees grow and how, different interventions in the forest can, lead the forest to develop in different directions and so on. So that I think that is the problem, that there's a lack of raising awareness about forests already through the various levels of education, starting with the youngest ones.
What actually have we not learned from them? Because in fact, if we want to introduce this in our educational system and we look at back how our great grandparents were managing the environment, you realize that they were far better managers than we are today. So what have we not learned from them, or what actually is missing in this particular generation that we cannot manage our forests?
Yeah, Mahmoud, I think you're making another very important point. In fact, that was another very important finding of this global survey, that, curricula, university curricula, but already in the schools really take into insufficient account all the knowledge, the traditional knowledge, the local knowledge that is out there, that already exists. In many parts of the world, the formal knowledge that is being taught at universities and so on is actually has not changed that much. It's kind of, it has evolved from some parts of the world historically, if you look at, Europe and so on, which then kind of, very much influenced forest education in many other parts of the world. So these curricula have developed using a relatively limited set of types of knowledge, but the local knowledge that is so important for being able to manage the forest and the trees well in a given local context has insufficiently been included into the curricula and into the formal education systems. So that is one of the very clear, conclusions also of the conference, that, we need to include traditional and local forms of knowledge much more effectively into forest education systems.
Okay, so let's look at the curriculum and how this, is going to be implemented forest education, going back to the old system. I think this happened in the past. No, they were not in a classroom, but they're actually educated on how to manage the forest. So what are we considering, and how is it going to be implemented across the country? We'd all love to see, I would love to see Ghana implementing this from the primary, even from the KG, the young boys and girls, and to the university. How are we going to implement this? And how is it going to look, the standard curriculum for this particular forest education we are talking about? Have you considered some factors to be able to implement it?
Yeah, Mahmoud, the truth is really, this is now actually the homework that needs to be done. And that, of course, is not a small challenge, but, as a concrete follow-up to the conference, the Collaborative Partnership on Forests, which is a partnership of the 15 leading international organizations and agencies around the world with a global mandate to work on forest issues. This Collaborative Partnership on Forest has launched a new initiative, global initiative on forest education. And this new initiative on global forest education aims to tackle the problem, in various respects. For one, there's sometimes quite a detachment between, for example, forest policies and the government institutions in a country and the reality of forest education. That is oftentimes the case also in Africa, for instance. So one of the challenges will be to improve forest policies and government policies in support of forest education. And of course, that requires collaboration with governments around the globe, including governments in Africa. And this is, for example, where the FAO can make a real strong contribution. The other dimension is that, we also need to work with the education institutions themselves. And as I've mentioned, 𝗂𝗲𝗏, our membership consists mainly of the universities. So this is where 𝗂𝗲𝗏 can provide a platform, to work with the universities towards improving their curricula. Of course, there is no one-size-fits-all approach that would suit every university around the globe, but there are some core pieces of a curriculum that that's what the experts say should be, taught in all parts of the world, and these then need to be complemented, by different, local types of knowledge and so on. And what 𝗂𝗏𝗏 can do is to provide a platform for developing these kind of core curricula and for and facilitating discussions with educational institutions that can help them improve their own curricula. And the third dimension is the vocational training, to really, lifelong learning of practitioners and so on. And that is where the other partner, the International Tropical Timber Organization, comes into the picture. They have already launched, for example, an online learning course on legal and sustainable supply chains. And one of the concrete roles that 𝗂𝗏𝗏 also intends to play is to enhance online access to educational resources of all sorts. Because that's one thing we see is there is a lot out there. There are many good examples, but they cannot be accessed very easily. So what we launched at this conference was a prototype, we call it the 𝗲𝗏𝗏, a prototype of an online platform which provides access to learning resources, educational resources from all around the globe. And our hope is that in the next month, we can mobilize the resources to develop this in a full-fledged, this prototype in a full-fledged online platform that will do just that, enable access to educational resources. And our hope is that already that will be a big step forward. But of course, that is what the three organizations can do. And now we are committed to mobilizing the necessary resources. But of course, it cannot stop there. This is really a global challenge.
Okay, so